What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Brian Sports Hub. If you are new here, my name is Brian, and I am the host of this podcast. I am so thrilled to have you guys join me today as I film my first NFL-themed podcast episode. I'm stoked. I've been waiting for this for a while, and the season just began. Last night was the Hall of Fame game. It was August 1st. It was Thursday, August 1st, and the game happened, I believe, at like 8 p.m. It did end early, sadly, so we couldn't see a full four quarters. Like we usually do in the Hall of Fame game. It was a weather delay. It was up in Canton, Ohio was the game. It was Chicago Bears, Houston Texans. I believe the Bears won. It was like 21-17. But nonetheless, the season is finally underway, and I can't be more excited. So before I get more into the video, let me send you to the intro, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can dive right into the list. All right, so like I said, this is my first NFL-themed episode, and I am so ecstatic, thrilled, and stoked. Not enough words can say how excited I am to talk about it today. And I figured, what better way to start my NFL series than to bring you guys my top 10 QBs heading into this season. So without a doubt, let's jump into number 10. And I'm pretty sure that if you have watched football in the last 20 years, you are very familiar and with this name, and that is Aaron Rodgers. And yes, I understand you have questions in your mind. They were in my mind too when I thought about this. And is this the guy that's like 40 years old? Isn't this the same guy that is going in his 20th season? Isn't this the same guy that tore his Achilles 4 snaps into the season last year? And the answer to all those is a very simple yes. Yes, he's 40. Yes, he's in his 20th year, just about his 20th year. And yes, he did tear his Achilles that prematurely ended his season at 4 snaps. However, I think a lot of us forget that just 2 years ago, this is the same guy at age 38 and 37 that won back-to-back MVPs of the NFL. He is very talented. He's not far off from being not quite at his peak, but like on the downfall of his peak, if you will. He's still pretty high up in the aspect of all quarterbacks in the league. And I think that really put me at ease, putting him at number 10. On top of that, you have to look at what the Jets have done this offseason. The Jets have been phenomenal in adding talent and upgrading the weapons that he has, as well as the offensive line that he has. So if you couple that with his natural talent, I just think that obviously that just adds up to success as being in number 10, or that adds up to a player being in the top 10 quarterbacks list. Now, honestly, I think it's going to be a little shaky to start. He's going to have to trust that Achilles. He's going to have to get used to all the weapons. He's going to have to build chemistry with all the players. However, by the end of the season, I could see an argument, and I can even see a scenario in my mind that he is a top 8, maybe even top 7 QB in the NFL. So I'm excited to watch the season. I'm excited to see how he does. But moving on to my 9th quarterback, this is a player that I believe has been really underrated recently due to the injury bug, so a lot of recent injuries, as well as the slight decline and underwhelming success of his team. And that player for me is Matthew Stafford. Now, Matthew Stafford, he was on top of the world in 2021. He was like 32. He just got traded from the Detroit Lions, who he loved. It was his beloved team because he got drafted by him and he stuck with them. And he goes to the Rams, he wins, but then the Rams just kind of declined because they didn't have the draft capital to back up and stock all the young talent to replace all the older talent that left. And on top of that, he also just he just had terrible injury luck. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. He just had terrible injury luck. Last year, he ended up hurting his arm. His wide receiver has been with the injury. Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receivers in the league. He has dealt with injuries the last 2 years. So I think if you look at this season as positively as possible, right? And you look at Matthew Stafford, and he now has a full season to heal. He's going to go in healthy. Cooper Kupp, full season to heal. He's going to go in healthy. And now you add Puka Nacua to it. I really do see a scenario where Matthew Stafford not only is in the top 10 and at number 9 right now, but even arguably in the top 6 quarterbacks in the league by the end of the season, just because he's that talented. And he has no pressure on him. And pressure can tend to make quarterbacks crack or can cause them to be better. But really, the best quarterbacks that have the best years tend to not even have any pressure on them. It's when the spotlight's not on you. And I think it's going to do great wonders for Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Moving on to my number 8 is the guy Matthew Stafford was traded for. That's Jared Goff. Now, Jared Goff has been underrated. His ability and his skills have been underrated because of the team he's been on. Kind of similar to like Matthew Stafford, where I said his skills and talent and his ability has been underrated because of his team. Well, this time, it's not because his team was bad. It's because his team is so young and so good. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Sam Laporta, a really good offensive line, arguably the best in the NFL. And you go on the list. Obviously, you can name all the list you want. So many people take for granted just how good a quarterback has to be to not only lead this team, but to manage who gets the ball, when he gets the ball, and how to take a team that hasn't won a playoff game since 1993 to a NFC championship game in their first playoff appearance in like 12 years. So I think Jared Goff has really just been underrated because not many people like to hold a good standard on mental skills. So managing a game, leadership ability, knowing when to throw the ball and who to throw the ball to. A lot of that is taken for granted on quarterbacks because they look at the more eye-popping, the elusiveness, the speed, the talent, the natural talent, right? So for that reason, I think Jared Goff has been underrated. And maybe he's even underrated in some of your opinion on my list. But I do think he's at the very least number 8 on this list. And I could see him even cracking top 5 by the end of the season. Very easily, I can see that scenario happening. So moving on to number 7. Now, I have a stigma and a rule when it comes to rating players and rating positions. And that is no player who is going into their rookie year or their second year should ever even touch the top 5 or arguably be even rated in the top 10 of their position because of the lack of stats to prove. I mean, you're only going off either 1 year in the NFL or you're going off 3-4 years in the college football world, which is a totally different game than the NFL itself. So for that reason, I don't like rating players there. However, I made an exception for this number 7 for my 7th ranked quarterback, and that is because it's CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud had such an excellent year last year. He had one of the best rookie QB performances in the league, in league history for that matter. He threw for like 4,100 yards. I don't remember how many touchdowns or passing completions he made or all that, but he was so good that he almost cracked top 5 MVP, or maybe he did crack top 5 MVP. I don't remember exactly, but he was in the running at one point for MVP, and he obviously won Offensive Player of the Year. There is a reason why he is this high. He has the natural talent. He has the game ability. He's young. He's on a young team. He has great receivers, and they somehow, some way, they even improved this young roster even more. And so now making the jump not only from the second worst team to like one of the top playoff contenders, they're now even arguably making the jump to arguably Super Bowl favorites or Super Bowl contenders, which is just ridiculous in 2 years. So getting back to CJ Stroud specifically, I just really like his game. I really like what he's done. I see a bright future for him. He might take a little bit of a sophomore slump. I could see him slipping to 8 or 9. But right now, I see him at number 7 firmly. And I could even see him going up to number 6 by the end of the year, maybe even number 5, because by the end of the year, he'll have 2 seasons under his belt, and if he plays just as good as he did his rookie season, I'll make that exception and put him in that top 5 because he just would have proved just how good he is. So, moving on to number 6. I have a player that I think has been overhated and underrated simply for the logo he has on his helmet, and that is Dak Prescott. People take for granted just how good Dak Prescott is because he's on America's team with the most spotlights, the most fans, the most, you can almost argue, bipolar fans, because 1 minute they're on top of the world saying we're going to win the Super Bowl. The next minute they're on the ground saying, why did we lose, the wild card? It's just, you're in a crazy situation with one of the most well-renowned, known fan base and team in the world practically. I mean, I think they're almost one of the richest organizations as well in the world. They're at some $1 billion that they're worth. Nonetheless, with all that pressure, the talent Dak Prescott has and his ability to control a game has really been taken for granted. Now, I used 4 metrics when I was looking at this, four abilities. It was game management / leadership. It was regular season success, postseason success, and natural ability, natural talent that is kind of like gifted to him. And for that reason, you look at Dak Prescott. He's not the fastest, but he can move. He's not the strongest arm, but he can throw. He's not the most accurate, but he was pretty good this year at the beginning with not throwing picks, and I think he ended the year at a decent touchdown to interception ratio. You look at regular season success. He's been very good in the regular season. The Cowboys have not missed a playoff game or playoff season in a little while now. You look at game management and leadership, which I don't remember if I already said this or not. He's done very well at that as well. And you just look at all of that. The only thing he's missing of those 4 is the postseason success. He's not really been great in the postseason. But if I'm looking at this objectively and taking off that Dallas star, this is a guy that finished second in MVP voting last year. Arguably could have won Offensive Player of the Year. Arguably could have won MVP because he was like top 3 in passing yards. He has the ability, he has the management skills, and he has the ceiling to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I just think so many people are taking that for granted. Now, personally, I still have him at 6 going into this season because I just don't know if he'll crack that top 5. But by the end of the season, I for sure see a scenario where he cracks that top 5, especially considering he has a little bit more of a fire under his butt this year, since the Cowboys have not paid him a contract, and it doesn't look like they will, at least not anytime soon. So it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be exciting to watch the Cowboys. They have 3 players under contract, and their biggest one is probably Dak Prescott because he's the quarterback of the team. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. But moving on to number 5, this might be a little bit controversial. It's Justin Herbert. I have Justin Herbert at number 5 for his natural talent. I think a lot of people forget just how good he was his rookie year. And like I said, I don't rank him off rookie year, but he's been in for 4 years. He's done well every year. He's just had a bad coaching scenario. That is his main flaw, and a little bit of injury luck, bad injury luck, right? But the main issue has been his coaching. The last 2 years, he's been under Brandon Staley. It hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been good. And Brandon Staley arguably should have not even been offered the head coaching job there. He just wasn't ready for it. He was better as a defensive coordinator, not as so good as a head coach, and it proved why in his 2-year stint with the Chargers. But Justin Herbert just has such a natural talent, and the fact that he's not only been with bad coaching staff, but has been in the same division as Patrick Mahomes really just hurts his view from the media and popular, like in his view from fan bases and fans of the NFL. It's tough to get recognition when you're in a division with the Chiefs, who are now back-to-back champions, and when you have a coach who is probably the most hated in the whole league. When you look at like Twitter and Instagram and social media, and granted, it's not the best thing to look at, but it's the only thing I can really reference. And when you look at that, Brandon Staley was probably hated worse than some offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators in the league. So all that coupled together really overshadowed just how good Justin Herbert is as a quarterback. And I really think he can blossom under Jim Harbaugh this season and really showcase how good he is and how good he can be. And I could even see him getting higher up in the top 5, maybe even getting in the top 3 quarterbacks by the end of the season. So for now, he's at 5. And moving on, number 4, one spot ahead of him, is Joe Burrow. This may also be a controversial take and a controversial ranking, but I will share my hot take. And to me, obviously, it's not a hot take, but to many people, it probably will be. And that is that Joe Burrow, to me, is overrated by the media. Now, he is a very good, natural, gifted talent. He is a very good quarterback. He can manage the ball well. He has one of the best ball securities, one of the best ball accuracy. He is very talented at the quarterback position. However, whenever I see the media ranking quarterbacks, they always put him at 2 for 1 or 2 reasons, if however you want to split it up. The first is that it's playoff success. And really, it's all based off the playoffs. That's the only reason why they rank him at 2. But the first one is playoff success. He's been to the Super Bowl, which he lost, and he's been to one other championship game in his 4 years. So he's been to 2 championship games. He was 1 for 2. And the other reason they rank him at number 2 is for beating Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And yes, he's the only active QB that has beat Mahomes in the playoffs. Only active. The only other player to actually beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs in Patrick Mahomes' career is Tom Brady, and Tom Brady now has retired. But to base a top 10 QB, which was supposed to be just top 10 QBs in the NFL, right? They didn't specify top 10 QBs in the playoffs, top 10 clutch QBs. They didn't specify any of that. They just say top 10 QBs in the NFL right now. And they always put Burrow at 2 because of his playoff success. And I think that is absolutely a horrendous way to rank them. When you look at QBs, you're looking at everything from book cover to book cover. Like, that's what you look at. You look at all the pages in between. You don't just read the front of the book. You don't just read the back of the book. You read the entire book to get the full story. And in order to do that, like I said, you look at 4 things. I do personally. Again, game and leadership. Burrow is obviously very good at a leader, very good at game management. He knows when to throw the ball, when not to throw the ball. That's part of the security. He also is very accurate, right? Number 2, you look at that natural talent. Like I said, the accuracy. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's very accurate. He can be mobile. Even though he's had those season-ending injuries, he's still pretty mobile. I think he's very good. And then number 3, you have regular season success. Yes, he's been good in the regular season, but not compared to the other 3 I'm about to mention in my next top 3 quarterbacks. And then you look at postseason success, which he's probably arguably the best postseason success so far in my top 10, other than Patrick Mahomes. So for those reasons, when I look at it, Burrow does not crack my top 2. He's not my second best QB if you look at all 4. There are 3 other QBs, like you'll find out soon, that, in my opinion, rank higher when you look at all 4 objectively. Now, Burrow, like I said, is still very naturally gifted, and I see him at 4. And if he comes back from this hand injury like we all expect, I can see him cracking the top 2. I can see him getting that 2 spot. I just have to see him be healthy, and I really need to see him, Josh Allen, and Lamar healthy all together, because those are the 3 that are grouped together to compare in that 2 to 4 spot. Now, moving on to number 3, I have Josh Allen. Josh Allen, to me, is kind of like a Burrow 2.0 when you look at gifts, natural talent. He's a little bit taller. He has a little bit stronger arm. He's a little bit faster. He's a little bit more bulky. That's just where I mean, he's a 2.0. He's just a little bit bigger of Joe Burrow. He's a little bit more, athletic than Joe Burrow. But his ball security is not the greatest, and his accuracy is not as good as Burrow. Good, but not as good as Burrow. However, when you look at playoff success, he has made it to the championship game. He hasn't won it like Burrow has, but he's made it to there. He's also won a pretty good amount of playoff games. He has a really good regular season playoff record. He's gotten the 2 seed a few times. He's gotten the 4 seed a few times. I mean, he's won his division multiple times. You look at natural gifts, like I said, he runs, he jumps, he hurdles, he catches. He does everything pretty much. He's really good. And then you look at the game management and leadership, and that's where that ball security kind of comes in. Yes, the ball security is not great. He is kind of known for throwing picks, but he's still done very well. And even in the playoffs, if I can jump back to that real quick, even in the playoffs, he hasn't been the reason they lost. It's just the defense hasn't been as great. And even if you look back in those stats, I mean, I think this year when he lost to, I believe it was Mahomes, when they lost in the second round, he threw 300 yards or something ridiculous, and they still lost the game. So it's nothing that Josh Allen hasn't been doing. It's what the Bills haven't been able to accomplish as a team. So going back to the game management, obviously ball security is a question, but his ability to actually manage the game and get it to the receivers they need to get it to is very good and is top 5, top 3 worthy. So for that reason, I do have him at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, I have the reigning MVP, Lamar Jackson. And like I said, Lamar, Josh, and Joe Burrow, they all get interchanged in this 2 to 4 range. At least they should be. They're all in kind of the same tier. They were all drafted pretty close to each other. They're all about the same age. They all are pretty much in the same tier with each other. For me, Lamar is making it up there for a few different reasons. I look at the 4, like I said. Game management. He's very good at getting the ball in the playmaker's hands, managing the game, knowing when to run, knowing when not to run. He knows he can lead a team. He's 2 of his 6 years, 2 of his 7 years, he's led the number 1 record team in the playoff or in the regular season, right? So that counts for not only game management and leadership, but it also counts for regular season success. He has the most regular season wins of any quarterback in 425, and he's still winning games like crazy. I mean, if you look at the records of him in the lineup versus him not in the lineup when he's injured, it really shows just how stark that difference is, and it really shows just how important Lamar is to the Ravens and how good of playoff or regular season success he has. Moving on to natural talent, we all know how gifted he is. He's elusive. He can run. He's quick. He's speedy. He can get out of pretty much any sack he looks at for some reason. We don't know how. He's, Houdini, as they always say. The only knock on him is his playoff success. He's 2-4. He has not proven it in the biggest stage. But like I said before, that is not a way to rank the top 10 quarterbacks. If I was ranking top 10 playoff quarterbacks, Joe Burrow would be 2. If I was ranking top 10 clutch quarterbacks, Joe Burrow would probably be 2 and Lamar would be like 8 or 10 or whatever. But if I'm just ranking based off quarterbacks, Lamar is the second best. And he has 2 MVPs to his name. And even if you want to knock out this year, he still has 1 MVP, which is more than Josh and Joe if you want to compare those 3 specifically. So for me, Lamar takes that number 2 pretty easily right now going into the season. And at worst, I see him dropping to like 4, 5. But I don't think he's going to drop out of that top 5 quarterback range as long as he stays healthy this year. Now, going into my number 1, which is pretty easy to predict, probably. Everyone has him unanimously as their number 1. If they don't, they should. It's Patrick Mahomes. 3-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time regular season MVP. The guy is just unstoppable. No one can stop him. Not even wide receivers that you may have picked up off a DoorDash or like DoorDash wide receivers, as I always call them, or those random people that you pick up out of Walmart. You could throw a giant grocery worker or a Walmart grocery worker in there, and Mahomes would probably still throw for like 4,000, 5,000 yards. He is just uber talented. He is very good. I don't see any scenario at all in the next few years where he will have that number 1 crown taken away from him just because of how good he has been, how good he is, how good his game management leadership is, how good his playoff success, how good his regular season success, and how good his natural talent is. I mean, he just encapsulates everything you need, and he's already making a case to be the best quarterback in all of league history. So, no doubter, unanimous for anyone, really, it should be, that he is number 1. So, to recap my top 10, I have Aaron Rodgers at 10. He's with the New York Jets. I have Matthew Stafford at 9. I have Jared Goff at 8. CJ Stroud at 7. Dak Prescott at 6. Justin Herbert at 5. Joe Burrow at 4. Josh Allen at 3. Lamar Jackson at 2. And Patrick Mahomes at 1, where he will probably sit there for the remainder of his career. In my eyes, I'm assuming he'll probably be there. But nonetheless, that is all for me. I don't know if this ran a little bit longer than I wanted to. I was trying to keep it a little short, but, having fun. I was so excited to finally film this. And I know I was trying something new with the podcast or a PowerPoint or something, but, you got to roll with the punches. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. But nonetheless, I am so excited to have this finally get out. And I know it's been a little while since the video's dropped. But that is all for me today. So for now, guys, this is it. This is the video. There should be one dropping next week. And just remember, this is Brian Sports Hub, your source for sports.